For more on the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, we're joined by Michael Lynk from Ontario. He is a former Special Rapporteur for the human rights situation in the Palestinian territories and is currently a Professor of Law at Western University. Great to have you on the program today. Thanks for joining us. Now, the US says Israel may have violated a humanitarian law using American weapons, but Congress has said that there isn't enough evidence to stop sending military assistance. At what point will the US and Israel be held to account for their actions in Gaza?
Well, we're slowly seeing the international law moving towards holding Israel to account. Obviously, decisions by the International Court of Justice, which are legally binding but are issuing provisional measures, orders against Israel. Israel can ignore those and will face no consequences. What is much different are the applications for arrest warrants issued by the International Criminal Court's prosecutor. This forum does have the ability to provide some legal sting to Israel. If the court does agree with the prosecutor to issue these arrest warrants in the days or weeks to come, and remember, the prosecutor almost always is successful in getting the court to issue arrest warrants against those it determines may have violated the Rome Statute for war crimes and crimes against humanity. Now, that's going to put a significant dent into Israel's international reputation. It means for individuals that Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant will no longer be able to travel to the 124 countries who are members of the Rome Statute, including almost all of Europe and Canada, Australia, Japan, a huge number of countries. That, I think, is probably the most worrisome development for Israel with respect to the possible political and legal consequences.
So given that Israel has not stopped the war yet, the US continues to fund it or fuel it, what is the next best way of stopping the actions in Gaza? Is it sanctions? Is it, you mentioned this legal fight and stopping Netanyahu from traveling, but what would be the next more global step to try and halt fighting?
Sure. Obviously, one would look at our legal institutions, the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court. But ultimately, the International Court of Justice, when it issues these provisional measures, doesn't have its own army, doesn't have its own police. It turns to the United Nations Security Council. And we all know that the United States, as one of the 5 permanent members of the Council, has issued 3 resolutions, has vetoed 3 resolutions that have called for a ceasefire. And the one resolution that it allowed to go through by abstaining in late March, it didn't push to enforce when Israel continued with its military offensive through the days of Ramadan that the Council resolution had called for. So what this is going to mean is something like is the International Criminal Court. That is independent of U.S. decision making, and that's really the main body that can generate the kind of accountability and end the kind of lack of impunity that we've seen with respect to Israel's actions, not only during the Gaza war, but over the last several decades with respect to defying UN resolutions.
The 3-phase plan described by Biden seeks to implement a permanent ceasefire, and it involves the withdrawal of Israeli troops from all populated areas of Gaza. What would that mean for the humanitarian situation if the IDF are at the very least out of the most populated areas?
Well, it would mean fulfilling some of the orders of the International Court of Justice, which have demanded that Israel allow unhindered humanitarian aid into Gaza at the levels that is needed. We know now that despite how bad it has been in Gaza, we've never reached a point where it's been this bad. The other day it was announced in the New York Times that while 350 trucks a day had to be coming into Gaza in order to meet the minimal needs of the 2.3 million Palestinians, only 50 trucks a day were getting in there because of the complete closure of the Rafah crossing by Israel. What we would need if there was a ceasefire that had durability to it was the unhindered flow of humanitarian aid going through Rafah, also going through Karim Shalom on the Israeli side, to the tune of 350 to 400 to 450 trucks a day. That's at the minimum to be able to forestall both the extreme starvation and also the unfolding famine that is occurring in Gaza.
The more right-wing, hawkish, lawmakers in Netanyahu's coalition are saying that this war must continue, want to deny the ceasefire that's on the table. This crisis in Gaza has raised some serious questions about the relevance of international law, even if it's of its very survival. Do you think that, that international humanitarian law is at risk of not surviving, given what's happening in the Israel-Hamas conflict?
Look, it's taken a big body blow during the last 8 months with respect to this, and we can put the responsibility not only on Israel, but clearly on the United States as well. The United States has operated with double standards with respect to its support for the work of the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice when it comes to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And yet, when the very same laws are being invoked to try to curb or stop Israel's military offensive in Gaza, the United States finds, I think, a number of political and legal reasons, most of them on a sound foundation, to say why international criminal law and international humanitarian law should not apply in this case. International humanitarian law has seen many bad moments and years over the last 80 years since it really came into being at the end of the Second World War. And I think it will survive because there's been a strong, pushback by certainly the global South and by many countries, increasingly in Europe, to come to its defense. And I think particularly if there's accountability at the end of this war with respect to the breaches of humanitarian law and criminal law, we'll see it get a second breath.
Really interesting. Great to get your insight. Thank you very much. Michael Lynk there.
Thank you very much.